Hello and welcome back to the channel for some more Prime Cutz, and this time around we have Terror Train from 1980, a slasher film with the Queen of Scream, Jamie Lee Curtis. Events open on a New Year's party outside a frat house where we're introduced to our main cast of characters slash victims. Events start rolling when some of the frat members trick the stereotypical nerd character into going inside the house under the pretense that one of the girls is going to sleep with him. Jamie Lee Curtis's Alana is roped into the prank without fully knowing what it is, and it turns out there's a dead body in the bed. It's quite grim, so the victim sort of freaks out. We cut to 3 years later. This time the party is taking place on a train, and all the characters are in costumes. And we get our first glimpse of David Copperfield, the David Copperfield, the magician, who is in this film. Apparently because one of the producers was just a fan of magicians and wanted one added into the story. Anyway, one of the characters is killed in his Groucho Marx costume as the train pulls away. Now, I really like the idea of setting a horror slasher type film on a train. It's a really good kind of enclosed location where your characters can't necessarily escape. The Groucho Marx mask makes for a really creepy villain, although the sort of gimmick of the film is that the killer throughout the film keeps switching costumes, so nobody is ever sure who he is. Anyway, so our killer follows Alana's friend Michi Michelle through the train because she believes obviously that he is somebody else. She is temporarily saved when they encounter one of the other kind of frat guys who was involved in the prank that we saw at the start of the film. And we get our first clue that this killer is somebody that everybody knows because there's a shocked moment. And then we cut to sort of our main cast of characters having a discussion slash argument. There's some elements in play with Alana looking to kind of move on and away from everybody. Her sort of partner boyfriend is argumentative, and he's quite a jerk. And then we get a bit more David Copperfield kind of crowbarred in doing some magic tricks. It later on is implied that he is possibly the killer, but it doesn't last for very long. It's just such an odd inclusion. Indeed, we even have a kind of a sequence which is an actual kind of magic show being done by him, and this goes on for quite a long time in the film. It really does hurt the pace of the film, the fact that we basically stop to watch this magic show. But anyway, we get a sort of introductory conversation between Alana and the train conductor, Khan, who turns out to be an unlikely ally for as things go on. Anyway, he finds the previous victim dead in one of the toilet cubicles, and he does, after kind of having a bit of a look round, go to get some others. But by the time he returns, it looks like the student has just passed out drunk. The blood has gone. Now the person in the costume is kind of moving and acting, hungover, basically. So of course nobody believes him that a murder has taken place. So far we've actually no evidence of anything is happening. Anyway, Michi comes along and she agrees to kind of look after her, or who she thinks is her friend, and sort of take him to one of the sleeping cubicles in the train. So we cut to obviously the two of them climbing into one of those cubicles, and then train innuendo and death. And we more David Copperfield looking quite freaky, quite scary during this sequence. And here we have Alana does come on and talk to the magician for a little while, and kind of an odd little conversation. But again, because it's not an element that was in the original script, it just kind of acts to slow things down. Eventually, Khan, the conductor, he's sort of doing his rounds, sort of sees a shoe on the floor, which makes him suspicious, and then he finds the body of Mitchie. He then tells Alana that, something is going on, do you know whose shoe this is? And obviously she begins to freak out and, doesn't believe what's really happening until eventually she does see the body of her friend. And then we get some more magic, and another one of the kind of early pranksters has been stabbed whilst this magic show is going on, but everybody kind of just thinks it's a prank, so none of the other kind of students / party goers, freak out or try to help. And we also, in that sequence, get some shots of who does turn out to be the killer, but we'll get on to that a bit later. So now, everybody who was involved in that prank is starting to, freak out a bit. Their friends keep dying. And, the conductor is trying to control a crowd now. People do start to realise that something is going on. More sort of padder filler sequences of like a band playing on the train. And Khan, the conductor, rushes to stop the train. So we get a nice dramatic, brakes squealing sequence, and everybody falls and trips. And it's time to sort of offload everybody so they can search the train, potentially for anybody who shouldn't be there or any suspicious killers. So we get a nice kind of stalking around sequence, and there's some really lovely shots. I mean, I love some of these shots of the corridors with the kind of eerie lighting and kind of emphasizing the cramped spaces. Alana's boyfriend kind of goes a bit mental and believes that the best way to stay safe is to lock both of them into like one of the carriages now that the train is empty. And frankly, this guy is a jerk. I kind of get it from a kind of creating drama in the film point of view, but he's such a jerk throughout that it's that old thing of why has she ended up being his girlfriend in the first place if he's like this. She saying that they should be helping people, she goes outside, but then of course he locks the door behind her because he's basically every man for himself at this point. But luckily it's just one of the conductors that she's run into. Unluckily for her boyfriend, the killer is actually in the carriage that he's now locked himself into. So of course he's not long for this world, and that's the end of him. Having not really found anything, they start loading everybody back onto the train. And at this point, suspicion has fallen upon the magician because nobody really knows who's booked him or why he's there. He just seems to have turned up. And of course, he's got, various swords and implements that, could be used to stab people. So, that's the theory, is that he's the killer. So we move into a sort of a phase of the movie where, they're trying to investigate who this guy is, whilst the train staff are trying to keep people calm. One of the other students is killed, and of course he's killed with one of the magician's swords, further kind of raising that suspicion. And again, we get some nice kind of creepy shots as they go to try and investigate, where the magician has kind of set up all of his stuff. Meanwhile, they've actually kind of locked Alana away by herself in a sort of carriage at the back of the train for her protection, but she had set up a prop, sort of a decoy her under this coat, so when the killer emerges and tries to get her, Jamie Lee goes into action. She is the Queen of Scream. She knows what she's doing. So we get a classic slasher chase sequence, this time through a train, ending up into this kind of storage area towards the back. And for a moment, it shockingly looks like the killer is actually going to get our lead. He's got her, but she manages to fight back. Creates a bit of distance by hitting him with the old fire extinguisher spray, and locks herself into the kind of office safe room area as he starts to knock out the lights. She does actually manage to escape with a cunning use of some of the things in the office area, and she struggles, gets away from him, and manages to encounter the train staff again and some of her friends, having believed that the killer has now fallen off the train. But of course, we all know that he's still there. He's still grabbing on, and we start to move into sort of the final part of the film. And again, there's a bit more investigation goes on, and we find that the magician is dead, so it's definitely not him. He's too been offed. So Alana, runs for help to tell the conductor, it's not the magician, but the conductor has now been replaced by the killer who's wearing the uniform. And of course, it's the character from the start of the film who we saw getting tricked, and a quick bit of shoveling, and he's off the train. There is a kind of a plot element which is a bit troubling, where it turns out that the killer has gone unnoticed for a long time because he was posing as the magician's assistant in drag. And you sort of combine that with the fact that he's portrayed as being psychologically unstable, and it's a little bit troubling, that kind of area around the kind of drag element, the cross-dressing, and connecting that so strongly to mental illness. But overall, the film, it's got some really cool elements. I really like the idea of setting it on the train. I really like the idea of the killer kind of swapping costumes, and that's what's helping him kind of get close to people and avoiding people working out who it is. It's a shame that the film does get bogged down and kind of slowed down by the David Copperfield inclusion, because his kind of sequences don't really add anything to the story, and just like I say, he's just there because one of the producers wanted him to be in it, or one specifically wanted a magician to be added into the mix of elements. Aside from that, it's pretty much a classic kind of slasher movie of the period. It's not a classic by any means, but it's worth a watch. It's diverting for what it is, and it's mostly watchable because of Jamie Lee Curtis, because she's excellent in the lead role. Playing the sort of part that she was really kind of being known for at this point. She's come off the back of Halloween, The Fog, and Prom Night, so she really was the master of this terrain by this point. Give it a look. So that is Terror Train. We'll catch you again soon for some more Prime Cutz. Do like and subscribe, and we'll speak later.